Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And that brings us to a title which has been designated by Criterion at spy number 1240. And this is a work which is described as being from the year 1968. And the name of the filmmaker is William Wyler. And the name of the work is Funny Girl. This is the work, the really fantastic and remarkable achievement, musical entertainment extravaganza, a really emotional film, which is from the legendary director William Wyler. It is it is a film which is from 1968, or described as being from the year 1968, and the producer's Ray Stark, and screenplay is by Isabel Leonard, based upon the musical play with Julie Stein and Bob Merrill in terms of the music and lyrics, and then also um, uh, um, Herbert Ross directing the musical numbers, because this is a musical, a cinema musical. And we have amongst the great cast people like Omar Sharif as Nikki, and starring the one, the only, the legendary Barbara Streisand as Fanny Bryce in this film. What a great film this is. Funny Girl. So, Funny Girl, the William Wyler film, another William Wyler film, comes to the Criterion Collection physical media catalog, and so that's great. That's really great. I mean, the more Wyler films, the better. And as we know, Wyler's career is far-reaching and very expansive. It is in many ways a kind of very emblematic career in the form of Hollywood, and that is very. I think that's there's no that is on display here with this 1960s extravaganza musical that is also showcasing the great talents of a real fantastic performer from Broadway musical and performance in the form of the great Barbara Streisand, but now in the cinema musical sphere. And after this film, the rest, as they say, is history. In terms of Barbara Streisand's own cinema musical performance, her own cinema career as an actor and a performer, and then later as a director, and indeed her maybe her career as a film director, which has also been touched upon, I think, really wonderfully in the context, say, of the Criterion Collection physical media catalog with a work like The Prince of Tides. Her career as a film director is also touched upon to refer to a little bit in the supplements with regard to the care and affection that was had between her and William Wyler, her director in this work, Funny Girl. And so that's a really lovely touch. We'll talk a little bit about the supplements somewhat later in this video discussion, but before we do, my dear friends, I'd like to just share just another anecdote, if I may, just as a maybe a prelude or an overture to talking about the plot or story structure of this wonderful film, Funny Girl. And that anecdote is a very simple one, which is my parents really loved this film. Um, I think my father, my mother and father were big fans of Barbara Streisand, and so they had a number of her records, and they'd seen a lot of her films. I mean, they knew a lot about Barbara Streisand more than I. I admit to not having the best grasp over the career and works of Barbara Streisand, but I consider myself a fan based in no small part upon the great affection that my parents had for a lot of her works. And one of the films that they really loved to watch was Funny Girl. And so I remember I have fond memories of this playing on the TV as maybe in the living room and hearing some of the songs, some of those showstopper numbers that she performed. And there are a lot of showstopper numbers here. It's really fantastic. But and also the wonderful interplay, the chemistry, the on-screen chemistry, which is undeniable between Fanny Bryce, Barbara Streisand's Fanny, and also Omar Sharif's Nikki. And also I remember my mom had a huge crush on Omar Sharif. Everything from like Lawrence of Arabia to Funny Girl, and then there was even an instance where it's mentioned in the Criterion supplements where Omar Sharif was also like a championship bridge player, and card player, bridge player, which might have something to do with the real effectiveness of the performance of Nicky, who himself is a character that is engaged in card play and gambling, etc. But Omar Sharif was a bridge player, a very good one. And I'm not familiar with the world of bridge, but I remember there was a video which was called "Playing Bridge with Omar Sharif." Which was one of these interactive VHS tapes that one could play in order to sort of play, have the illusion of playing bridge with Omar Sharif through the magic of the VCR or something like that. So, in any event, yes, my mom had a huge crush on Omar Sharif, and that went such a long way to her really loving this film, Funny Girl. It could have been maybe her favorite Barbara Streisand film. I'm not sure. But it was certainly played a lot in my household growing up. So I have a kind of running soundtrack in my mind dating back to when I was a kid. And even now I have strong memories and associations with it. And my mom would occasionally play some of the tunes on the piano as well. She was a wonderful piano player. So in any event, a Funny Girl. So I have some lovely associations with this film in my own say family memories, but that makes me very nostalgic in a bittersweet way in looking at this film, and it's a good setup, I think, an entryway into watch or rewatch of this film, Funny Girl, because it is a film that is about. It is a film that is bittersweet. I mean, it's a film that is the story of Fanny Bryce, the rise and of the fame of Fanny Bryce from her very humble beginnings with her family, and in the great performance of Barbara Streisand, who is also using her looks and her mannerisms, which I mean she acknowledges, Barbara Streisand does, and many others do here, that she acknowledges as being perhaps quote unquote unconventional, quote unquote not within the norm of the Hollywood standard of beauty, end quote. But using that to her advantage in terms of showcasing who Fanny Bryce is in the form of the Streisand performance, and then also really making her mark in a way that is oftentimes employing wonderful, broad physical comedy. You know, we see her early beginnings as a performer, maybe not so successful and really not getting her start, but doing her very best, and maybe making her mark, maybe sometimes unintentionally at first, but then realizing that there was a way into the entertainment world success by virtue of using her sort of physical comedy on stage in her routines as a means to not just get attention, but also get a lot of attention. And these early beginnings lead to her Fanny Bryce's rise in her own performance fame and stardom, leading to some really big success. In terms of what is it, the Ziegfeld Follies, and then even more success and sort of the name build recognition, Broadway star, worldwide global success, but also at the same time, parallel to this, We have the story of Fanny Brice and her relationship with a number of people that are important to her. One of which is, for example, the character played by the great Walter Pidgeon in this film as someone who is maybe nurturing her professionally and wanting to protect her, but also looking out for her best interests from a sort of performance and professional standpoint. But also from a personal standpoint, we have another key relationship, that between Fanny and Nikki. And I referred to Omar Sharif earlier. Another great performance. He emerges on the scene, excuse me, almost in this all of a sudden type of way, in a very dashing, somewhat mysterious, gentlemanly like manner, and through a set of circumstances that we see carry themselves throughout, say, the first part of the film into the second part. They meet and they fall in love, and there are some complications that seem to emerge somewhat slightly, but then gradually reveal themselves more and more, thus providing some real tense human drama between the two of them. And that's causing, I think, what one might say is one of the sources of the heart and soul of the film, namely the intimate relationship between Nikki and Fanny, and the sort of wedge that slowly emerges between them with regard to, say, his wanting to feel his own sense of maybe independence, his kind of his maybe perception of his own manhood in a way, and how that might be measured in his terms, in terms of a kind of financial success, or a whether that is in his own independent means, or whether it is through the dependence on the very successful Fanny Brice. That seems to maybe further fuel his desire to want to have a sense of independence. And the way that he is able to do this, or endeavor to do this, the only thing that he is the only thing he seems to know about in that realm is gambling. In a kind of professional manner, perhaps hinting at maybe slightly a swindler type of manner, although that might be nuanced or hinted at throughout the course of the film. But in any event, this is the maybe the drive and ambition of these two characters, and whether that independent streak of drive and ambition might somehow hold together in terms of a fruitful and long-lasting marriage and relationship between the two of them. Whether or not that is possible, you have to watch the film to decide. But this forms, I think, a lot of the emotional oomph of the film, and it forms a lot of the heartache and passion and real intimate desire that is expressed in these wonderful, as I say, show-stopping numbers. Barbara Streisand and Omar Sharif as well. I mean, there's some great moments where the two of them are performing as a kind of call and response type of manner, which is very cute, very charming, especially during the early stages of the courtship, as it were. But then there are also moments that are really driving home the fact that there are real significant emotional stakes, and maybe the possibility of betrayal, or maybe the possibility of a kind of reestablishment of some emotional loyalty, or perhaps something beyond that, or something apart from that. And so there are real emotional stakes at play here, and I think the performances all across the board, from Walter Pidgeon to Omar Sharif to Barbara Streisand, they really carry that very, very well. And the there is a kind of a wonderful, interesting interplay between, say, Fanny Brice, the character as portrayed by Barbara Streisand, and then also the life and times of Barbara Streisand, and it's somewhat obliquely acknowledged, I think, by Barbara Streisand and William Wyler and others in some of the supplements that are captured here. Maybe there might be a close affinity between Barbara Streisand and Fanny Brice. It's not Barbara Streisand is not Fanny Brice, and Fanny Brice is not Barbara Streisand. But as she acknowledges almost immediately in the audio interview, she says that there were aspects of Fanny Brice that she recognized as being very similar to her own, say, personality traits, and so she tried to use that in order to enhance her performance, which I think she does quite marvelously, and so there's a way in which Fanny Brice is seen as, I think, we see her in her sort of humble beginnings, we see her battling a sense of adversity, but never giving up, which I think this is, I think, a show of. This is an opportunity for viewers to have a kind of sympathy for her and root for her. And she has this nice wisecracking ability to fend off the press and to also keep in everyone's good graces while still maintaining her own sense of self, which I really like. And there's a sort of wisecracking nature to her jokes and to her banter, which I also find very almost fun-loving, but also an interesting defense mechanism in terms of, as I say, her public persona, which she has to keep kind of bubbly and bright on the one hand, but also inside when the emotional turmoil really, the stakes of those are raised to kind of an exponential turn. What will she do in terms of her public persona and her private persona? But it doesn't seem like it's a false wall that's being built. It seems like both sides are sort of organic outgrowths of the one and the same person, which I think is an interesting way in which Streisand is handling the role of Fanny Bryce. And also, one can glean from this for those who are experts in sort of the career and the filmography and the performance history of Barbra Streisand. In particular, one might glean for this some aspects of similar traits with Streisand herself, or not, or look at this as a sort of standalone cinema entertainment work of art that I think is very, very entertaining and very fun-loving and very charming, and also quite bittersweet with the tinge of tragedy and also the what-if kind of thing. You know, there's the feeling of life being lived and sort of regrets and that moment where all this stuff and all the baggage of many years of, say, love and fighting and pain and the betrayal and all this stuff that oftentimes happens between two people, a couple in a relationship that may love each other very much, but also have so much maybe strain in the relationship when they meet again. What will happen, and will there be a chance for return? I think that's a very accessible situation that is can be accessible to many a viewer, I think. And so that kind of yearning and longing, which I think is very human. So this is, I think, a total package. And I'm not the only one who believes this or feels this way. I mean, it has such a global success, and you know, it's it's wonderful to watch it again now. And as I say, as I am recalling these wonderful memories that I have with this nostalgic turn, I'm finding myself totally absorbed and engaged. Fanny Bryce is a kind of hero on her own track, but always showing a sign of wanting some kind of emotional stability, or wanting some kind of sense of loving and type of a life with her, a life with someone that she loves, which I think is a really a very understandable, I think, feeling, at least from my perspective, anyway. So that makes this all the more sympathetic and all the more welcoming, while being a true kind of show-stopping musical extravaganza that I think is showing a lot of range and a lot of scope and a lot of passion and a lot of feeling. What a great film this is. This is one of my favorite Barbra Streisand performances. As I say, I'm not the biggest expert when it comes to Barbra Streisand, but I am an admirer. And so because of the greatness of the film and also my own personal memories, this is my one of my favorite performances, one of my favorite Barbra Streisand films. And I'm glad it's in the Criterion Collection. It's the film which is Funny Girl. The Criterion Collection has released this film, Funny Girl, courtesy of this 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition release at spine number 1240. This is again the film from 1968 from the legendary film director William Wyler, and this is purported to be based on a 4K digital restoration with 5.0 surround DTS master audio soundtrack. I mean, it looks and sounds great, it really does, and I have the 4K disc in the machine right here. I mean, I remember it was many years ago when I saw this as a kid. I mean, it it was a big deal to be able to watch it, say, in letterbox, and now here we are in 2024, and we're able to watch it in this great restoration state. It's wonderful. I've removed the fold-out insert from the inside of the plastic case. It's the fold-out. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it says about the master, and I quote, "Funny Girl is presented in the original aspect ratio of 2.35 to 1. The film was restored in 4K by Sony Pictures Entertainment from the 35mm original camera negative and the 35mm original 6-track magnetic stereo soundtrack master. The feature is presented in Dolby Vision HDR, high dynamic range, on the 4K Ultra HD disc, and high definition SDR, standard dynamic range, on the Blu-ray," etc. So this is a undertaking by Sony Pictures Entertainment, and it's now the basis of this Criterion release in 24. I mean, it looks and sounds spectacular. So Sony Pictures have really done cinema lovers and admirers of Barbra Streisand musicals and Funny Girl and William Wyler films and the like. A great service. I mean, it looks stunning. It really does. I mean, it has this wonderful. It has a 60s feel to it. It has that. There's this lovely sense of the wideness of the frame and kind of filling up the frame. And that's one of the things that's great about William Wyler's direction. Is the frame is filled up so much with so many details, and the characters are on one side, and a number of things are happening on the other side. But then suddenly it jolts you with this kind of close-up of Barbra Streisand's face and a sort of key scene between her and Omar Sharif. And then you have these wonderful, almost experimental shots using helicopters and things that might, in today's, they might be achieved today with sort of cameras and flying drone technology or something. But, back in 67, 68, I mean, the technology employed to capture, there's a really famous scene involving a tugboat and Barbra Streisand on the water. That's the real deal, and the helicopter shot that was used to capture that moment. It's really epic, and it sort of closes out essentially the first act of the film in a sense. So, in any event, this is it's stunning, and it's all captured in full display, in full glory, in the way this looks and sounds. And I must say that it sounds crystal clear and spectacular. No crackle, no rips. It's very sharp and very direct, and I love that. Triumphant. Kudos to, as I say, Sony Pictures Entertainment, and then also to Criterion for using that as a basis for this presentation, or materials for the basis of their release here. Very, very pleased indeed. I'm very impressed with this. I'm not as I say, I'm not the biggest expert when it comes to the release history of this, the previous release history. So, my take might be quite limited and very shallow in terms of my perspective. And if you feel that way, I really apologize. I don't mean any disrespect, but again, very, very taken with this, and I'm very, very happy with how this looks and sounds. And my dear friends, now let us turn to the supplements. I have here I have the Blu-ray in the player behind me over my shoulder. I have the 4K disc before, but I took the 4K disc out, and now I have the Blu-ray disc in the player because, as per usual, as customary with Criterion Collection releases of its 4K titles, we have the 4K disc with the film, and then if you want to go to the Blu-ray, you can also watch the film on the Blu-ray on standard dynamic range. It still looks, to my eyes, still looks great on the Blu-ray or on the 4K. But also on the Blu-ray, you have the benefit of accessing the supplements, and so that's why I have the Blu-ray in the player behind me. There's no commentary track, which is a shame. It would have been nice if there was a commentary track, but I should point out that maybe some of the supplements might serve as a kind of commentary track. And actually, let me go to the supplements right now. I'm going to press the supplements button. The first thing that comes up is Barbra Streisand. This is an audio interview with her, which serves as a kind of commentary track in and of itself. It's approximately 40 minutes, so it doesn't go throughout the entire duration of the film, I understand, but she does speak very clearly with a great deal of clarity and precision, and a lot of affection for a number of the players of Funny Girl, such as her her professional relationship with William Wyler, and she really adored William Wyler and wanted to really have her performance be one that pleased him, and so. And also, William Wyler in Barbara Streisand mentioned how William Wyler gave her some real encouraging words of advice when she was embarking on her own feature film directorial career, which is really quite lovely. An anecdote regarding her work on a film which is called Yentl. So that's a really lovely anecdote. And so, but Barbara Streisand, as I say, her audio interview here serves in its way a lovely commentary to the film. Really great, insightful comments from Streisand here. I mean, she talks about Isabel Leonard as a writer, and also the sort of metamorphosis of this work from the stage play, the musical stage play, and then to in terms of the screenplay and how it transformed into the film through the efforts of many involved, such as Ray Stark and company, and also the connections that were had personally with Fanny Brice, and so Barbara Streisand. She talks a little bit about how she was cast in the role. I mean, there were some interesting say, circumstances in which she was ultimately cast. I mean, it wasn't, as she acknowledges, it wasn't necessarily the easiest path to being cast. Maybe it took some convincing on the part of the powers that be. And also whether or not she could really portray the real life Fanny Brice in a way that would be believable to audiences. But the proof is right here in the end product of Funny Girl, and she did a fantastic job that is celebrated critically and also totally acclaimed. But yeah, she talks about the path to being cast in the role. But when she and also her work, I mean, in terms of the musical, and then how that carried over into the film, and apparently too, William Wyler really was appreciative of the fact that Barbara Streisand, who already had experience with the role of Fanny Brice. In the performances, knew the character, therefore was then able to come on board to the film because she already had a good background into who Fanny Brice was in terms of her interpretation. So that was great. And talking to about, again, William Wyler, she refers to him as Willie in this sort of affectionate way. She says that he was a very encouraging director, and also working with the director of photography, Harry Stradling, too. She says that he and she had a great working relationship, and that Stradling wanted to photograph her in a very appealing way. There was some lighting techniques that he employed to something called the Strylight, which is also interesting, and that, according to her, he photographed her in her first 4 films, including Funny Girl, of course. So just this great working relationship that she had with the director of photography and also her director, and also to acknowledge that she had her own ideas and she had her own sense of the character, and so but also she was so impressed about how Wyler, for example, allowed her to be to watch the dailies and also to become a kind of collaborator in terms of ideas that might have shone through. Not to say that all of the ideas that Streisand had were ones that Wyler agreed with. I mean, there's an instance where she might have disagreed with Wyler on maybe a particular scene setup, as she mentions, but it wasn't any sort of source of any kind of antagonism between the two. Again, on the contrary, they were really, really close. And I think it was alluded to in another supplement where it was surmised that perhaps Ray Stark might have, or someone might have, maybe leaked some false press to the media to suggest that maybe there was a sour relationship between Wyler and Streisand, where nothing could be farther from the truth. They were very, very close. And Wyler also acknowledges in one of the interviews that we have later that he also looked upon their professional relationship very, very fondly. That's lovely, really, really lovely. And also talking about Omar Sharif, working with Omar Sharif, and also some of the ways in which their numbers together worked. There's a number, "You are woman, I am man," and his part is sung, but her refrain is kind of spoken, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Also allows for her maybe emotional agitation in that moment. As someone who's nervous and who's on the sort of cusp of requiting her feelings of love and affection towards this man. So the performance also allowed, and choices in the performance and how it was performed allowed her to express herself in this emotional range, which is a really, really great insight. And then talking about Walter Pidgeon, another great performance, as I mentioned earlier. Talking about the very interesting camera technique used in there's a ballet Swan Lake moment in the film where Fanny Brice is performing in this very Fanny Brice way, the Barbra Streisand Fanny Brice way, which is really lovely. And it's interesting because she said that she always had a dream of being a ballerina, which never came to be, according to her. But this is part of her way, maybe, to relish in that dream, even if but for a moment. And there's also the tugboat scene. She mentions how on the train up there, she had her dog with her, Sadie, and also there's a bit of serendipity on the boat. Her lucky number is 24, and it's just by chance the number that's shown on the tugboat behind her as she's giving this show-stopping number is 24, and so that's a really lovely detail. It's great to listen to her. Really, really great. She's so insightful and very precise, but also very warm and giving. In particular, in terms of how she views Wyler. It's really lovely. So this is, in its way, a kind of commentary track of sorts. It's a great interview. It's an audio interview with Streisand, Barbra Streisand. So we don't see her speaking, but we hear her voice. It's undeniable as we see stills and shots from the movie. So this is great. This is approximately 40 minutes. So please check this out if you can. It's really wonderful. So that's the first one, the Barbra Streisand audio essay. Next up, we have David Wyler and Alicia Malone. And I press this and it says, "In this conversation recorded for the Criterion Collection in July 2024, David Wyler discusses Funny Girl and the career of his father, director William Wyler, with film writer and television host Alicia Malone." This is another great one. This is approximately 26 minutes, so we have the two of them sitting in a room. And he talks too about, David Wyler talks about how when he was a young boy, William Wyler being his father, he visited the set one day of Funny Girl, and he saw Barbra Streisand. Didn't get to know her so closely at the time because she and William Wyler and others were in the midst of preparing the film or that particular scene. But he has those memories, and also the real great legacy of William Wyler, the film director, with classic films, The Best Years of Our Lives, Ben-Hur, Roman Holiday, and others, and then Funny Girl, coming in the sort of a later period, one of the last great successes of William Wyler, and an incredibly varied career as well. So this is also a celebration of the legacy of William Wyler and a kind of primer into the world of William Wyler. It's really great. And there's another William Wyler documentary that will also serve that purpose very well. This is a lovely conversation between the two of them here. There's also a detail about how one of the first directors that was considered before William Wyler was Sidney Lumet, which would have been an interesting thing to have seen a Sidney Lumet directed Funny Girl. But as I say, the history had other ideas, and William Wyler came into the picture. They surmise that maybe it was because the people who were involved, Ray Stark and Barbra Streisand, what did he say? They were clearly very opinionated. I think that's what David Wyler says here. So they surmise as to why Sidney Lumet might have left, and then leaving room for William Wyler to come into the space of the director. And William Wyler had wanted to direct a musical. He'd always wanted to direct a musical. He had so many types of films in his wonderful and varied career, but he wanted to do a musical. According to David Wyler, he almost did The Sound of Music, but he decided against it for certain reasons that David Wyler gets into here. Also, there was Herbert Ross directed the musical numbers, but there's an interesting anecdote that David Wyler tells about how William Wyler made sure that he was on the set while Herbert Ross was doing the directing of the musical numbers. So to be sure that, yes, William Wyler was still the director of the film. So that's really lovely. And then, like some show-stopping numbers like "Don't Rain on My Parade," etc. And there would be these storyboards for large event set pieces, and also getting to know William Wyler a little bit of his career, working up the ranks. Starting with Universal Pictures and their two reel westerns that ended up becoming longer reel westerns, and that ended up leading into a full-fledged career as a director. And also David Wyler mentions how there are a lot of other directors and filmmakers that he admired so much. Talking about like John Huston and Ernst Lubitsch, George Stevens, Sam Spiegel, Fellini. He mentions he had a great friendship with Sam Spiegel, but mentions how I think it would have been difficult to make a film. The fact that they didn't make a film together meant that they still could have a long-lasting friendship. That was very interesting. But also David Lean, Carol Reed are mentioned here. They say John Ford as well. And there's an interesting detail that emerges with regard to Omar Sharif and Barbra Streisand around the time of the filming of Funny Girl. This was where we had the conflict, the Six-Day War conflict between Israel and Egypt, and so there was some contention with regard to the casting of Omar Sharif in this role, where he was opposite Barbra Streisand. And so apparently there was some consideration as to whether they should the production should remove Omar Sharif and replace him with someone else in the role of Nikki. Well, Barbra Streisand was very adamant to have him stay on, and also William Wyler was insistent that he stay on. And I think that's a real testament to William Wyler and Barbra Streisand, and David Wyler and Cecil Malone remind us that William Wyler was Jewish, and so he really believed in Omar Sharif, and it shows in the film. So that's another very interesting anecdote. And the film was a box office success and a critical success, another great success in the career of William Wyler. I referred to a little bit earlier about the possibility that they surmised that maybe the producer Ray Stark might have planted some stories. We're not sure. Maybe it's possible. The possibility that maybe some stories were planted to try to foment some kind of antagonism in the press between Wyler and Streisand, but they got along very well. David Wyler mentions that he found that his father had written a letter addressed to Ray Stark, and in the letter he makes clear in no unclear terms about how upset he was at Ray Stark, but he never sent the letter, perhaps to his benefit in the long run, which is interesting. And they talk too about what the Wyler touch is, similar to what the Lubitsch touch is, and perhaps one aspect of it is really filling the frame with a lot of detail and letting the viewer explore, but also showcasing the humanity of the characters. And this is shown in the 2.35 widescreen aspect of Funny Girl. It's really fantastic in that way. And then there's a sort of variety in his films. I mean, you look at Funny Girl, Ben-Hur, The Collector, which is such an interesting film, and others. So, yes, trust the audience as part of the Wyler touch. So, this conversation between the two of them is excellent. So, please check it out if you can. This is approximately 26 minutes. Oh boy, my goodness, we're not done yet. This is fantastic. Next, we have directed by William Wyler, and excuse me, this is 58 minutes, and it says, and I quote, "This 1986 documentary, which traces the life and career of director William Wyler, was conceived by his daughter Catherine and includes Wyler's last interview, plus interviews with Betty Davis, John Huston, Laurence Olivier, Barbra Streisand, Billy Wilder, and others." Oh, this is so great. Excuse me. This is, as I say, it's nearly an hour. Oh, this is wonderful. You hear William Wyler himself speak. He's very modest. He's down to earth. You have also his wife there, who's also an actor in Hollywood. And he talks a little bit about his work at Universal. He has a family connection with Carl Laemmle, and his work with 2 reel westerns and 5 reel westerns, and just learning the trade. Also, there's some mention of some of his relationships. Margaret Sullivan early in his life. And also, he got through his gradual success at Universal. He then was able to get a contract with Samuel Goldwyn to make some real classic films: Dodsworth, Jezebel, and that we have Betty Davis. And Betty Davis mentions how she would have done anything for William Wyler in his direction, just utterly trusting in him. He says there was one moment where she disagreed with him in terms of how a particular shot should have been staged or taken, and she still mentions that even many years after the fact in a very affectionate manner. But William Wyler still knew how to treat his actors and performers with a lot of respect and deference. So, but also for the benefit of the film. Betty Davis is referring to a particular line of dialogue delivery in a film called The Letter. And there are other films that are mentioned, the Little Foxes. Laurence Olivier's mentioned, Wuthering Heights, and also to mentioning of William Wyler's war service, and how that was reflected too in another classic film that he did called Best Years of Our Lives. Very moving. Billy Wilder, a fellow filmmaker, legendary filmmaker, mentions how there's a particular scene in that film that really moves him to tears. It's a phenomenal film. And also other films too in the great and varied legendary career of Wilder. The Heiress, which is a wonderful film. Speaking of Criterion Collection, physical media release. Also, Roman Holiday, one of my favorite films. I love this film. And the Ben-Hur, The Collector I mentioned before, and then Funny Girl, the musical. And he says he always wanted to do musical. And we also have some great comments from Barbra Streisand and others. So this is absolutely lovely, very endearing. And again, it serves as a great sort of introduction into the world of Wyler. So anyone who might be interested in furthering their own Wyler cinema journey, this is, I think, another great place to go. That and the David Wyler, Alicia Malone discussion from one supplement earlier. But please check these out if you can. This one is approximately, what did I say, 58 minutes. That's that one. Next, Omar Sharif. Omar Sharif, this is great. This is approximately 18 minutes, and it says, excerpted here is a 2003 conversation with actor Omar Sharif, moderated by actor and Screen Actors Guild staffer and organizer Todd Morton for the SAG Foundation. Sharif discusses Funny Girl as well as his experiences as an Egyptian actor in the cinema world. Oh my goodness, this is wonderful. He's sitting on a stage in front of a live audience. And he's talking about his experiences with Funny Girl, working with Wyler and Barbra Streisand. Also, his general experiences as an actor. There's some real funny exchanges about when he's working with great directors and when he's working with not so great directors, and what makes a great director great and what makes a not so great director not so great. And he likes how great directors really can be honest about the performances of the actor, even when the performance isn't working. They just are very honest, and he appreciates that. And so he likes that kind of directness in the great directors that he's worked with. And also he talks too about his work in, as they say here, the sort of the Egyptian film industry, and how it was one film genre that was very popular among audiences were melodramas. And he has this interesting anecdote about how you could tell the success of a melodrama in the theater by how wet the floor is from all the tears that have been cried by all the audience members, which is a very interesting anecdote as well. Also, he has a great anecdote about a speech of Hamlet. So that's fantastic. But in any event, this is great, and he talks too about his referring somewhat to his career experience as a bridge player, etc. So, Omar Sharif, utterly fantastic. So please check this out if you can. This is approximately 18 minutes. Then we have 3 original featurettes. These are really cool. The first is This Is Streisand. These are kind of short featurettes that are kind of like promos of the film that were made, circa 68. So the first one is This Is Streisand. The second one is Barbara in Movieland. And the third one is The Look of Funny Girl. And it says here, when Funny Girl was released in 1968, Columbia Pictures produced 3 featurettes that include on-set footage of the cast and crew and a look at Irene Sharaff's costume designs. That's great. That's referring to the third one, The Look of Funny Girl, that has all these. Barbra Streisand, it's like she is a a fashion model. It's like her own fashion model runway short, and we see her in all these various costume designs. It's really cool. That's the third one, The Look of Funny Girl. The first one is this is Streisand, which has this kind of uh, uh, this wonderful way of introducing Barbara Streisand. You know, she is an original. She is a one of a kind entertain that kind of appeal, and it's a great little introduction into Barbara Streisand, who she is. Because in many ways, for a number of people, maybe this was sort of the cinematic intro into for Barbara Streisand. I mean, of course, she was already this very famous performer on, say, Broadway and on the stage, but now she was making her foray into films, and so there's this promo into Barbara Streisand. And then the second one is Barbara in Movieland, which is using the conceit of Charlie, the person who works at the train station, and we see. I think it's a kind of it's that's the conceit that this is made. So Charlie is walking around, and he's on the set as Barbara Streisand is getting off the train in one of the scenes and walking towards, going to the tugboat in another scene, and seeing how everything's being shot and the like. You know, Charlie at the train station in Hoboken. I think that's one of the same. So it's a really neat little setup for this other brief featurette. Very, very cool, sort of behind the scenes, or as some of the key sequences around the middle of the film are being shot. So that was very cool. So these three from circa 68 short featurettes act like promos of the film, but they're very, very endearing in their own way. So please check these out if you can. That's wonderful. And then there's a deleted scene. And the deleted scene is a scene between Nikki and Fanny, a dialogue scene about essentially their lives together and what it is they hope in terms of their time together. It's a really lovely scene between the two. But in any event, that rounds out the supplements that are included with the Criterion release. As I say, there's no commentary track, which is a shame, but in many ways, the Barbara Streisand interview or audio essay is itself its own commentary track, and it is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then, of course, there are the introductions and the discussions of William Wyler, and also the backstage intrigue into the film. Oh, it's so fantastic. William Wyler being this calming presence. Everyone wanted to please William Wyler. It was great. Such a legend, one of the top legends of Hollywood film directors ever. Films like Funny Girl are part of that great legacy. So all in all, this is a wonderful, and Omar Sharif and others, and it's great. So all in all, this is a wonderful collection of supplements included with the Criterion release. And now I'd like to wind down our conversation of this great Criterion release of this great work, this great musical, Barbara Streisand, William Wyler, Omar Sharif, Funny Girl, and just talk about the contours of this. This is a 2-disc set, and we have the Blu-ray and the 4K. The Blu-ray is on the back with this yellow disc on the back there, which is nice, and then we have the 4K disc, which has the black coloring there, which is a really nice. And then if you remove the discs, excuse me here, if you remove the discs, I'll just be very careful. You can actually see revealed there in another moment, which is a showstopper from the film, which is great. So I like this. I'm really becoming quite enamored by the fact that if you have 2 discs, Criterion oftentimes will decorate the discs in a kind of creative way. So here we have different color versions of the logo, if you will, of Funny Girl with this great font, which I appreciate. And then the front and the back here, which is nice. And that's also part of the Blu-ray menu, or the 4K menu as well. And then I've also removed the insert, the fold-out. I've said it many times, I'll say it again, I'm not a fan of the fold-out insert type. I wish this were a staple booklet because it has more possibilities for robust pages and more writings and inclusion of pictures, etc. But this does, I think, it's best in terms of inclusion of pictures in this way, and also carrying on this wonderful, I think, 60s evocative yellow and orange motif, which is great. It's also, we see it in the color usage of the font here, in the word Funny Girl, the letters that spell funny and girl. But then there's the great Koreski essay, Michael Koreski essay, A Feeling Deep in Your Soul, which is another great essay. I've read this a number of times, covering the film, the themes of the film, and deconstructing marking it in that term, in those ways. Barbara Streisand's career, William Wyler's career, Omar Sharif, etc. Oh, it's great. Please watch the film first, and then after you've seen the film, you can read the great Koreski essay. So it's wonderful. I'm going to put the insert back in the case and then snap the plastic case shut like so, and then there we go. You have it here. This is another great way for Criterion to end the year with a release like this. It's lovely to have musicals in the collection. It's lovely to have more William Wyler films in the collection, more Barbara Streisand films in the collection. So this is another classic one. Again, I have this wonderful affection for this work for reasons which I've tried to explain in the course of this discussion. So it's wonderful to be able to revisit it again in the form of this Criterion release of the film, which is Funny Girl. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Funny Girl, including other films directed by William Wyler, including other films in the Criterion Collection, and beyond. So until we see each other again, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.